So the first thing I would like to do is to, if I may use this stupid term, to deconstruct the entire opposition, namely, what is the opposite of disposable life? It should be something like useful life, something that we need. It's not just that we should fight against disposable life, but also the whole field which opposes something which can be of use to something which we no longer need. For example, how do we use the term disposable in everyday language? It's usually for razors, scans, or whatever. The problem is not, are things disposable? The problem is the entire horizon of experiencing things as reduced to their utility, to their instrumental value. In one of the passages from late 50s, I think, Mao says, when people die, even if millions die, we shouldn't condemn it abstractly. We should analyze it closely. Was their death useful to us or not? And then he goes quite instrumentally into, if people die in a useless way, of course, it's bad. But if their death is useful, no problem, and no problem, and so on and so on. And as we know, Mao Zedong went to the end here. For example, when there was in Cold War the danger of atomic warfare, Mao made his famous pronouncement: we can risk atomic war. We are almost 1 billion. If half of us die, still 500 million remains, and so on and so on. We find the same reasoning in the late 20s in Soviet Union with forced collectivization, when the Soviet government, or rather a Communist Party, simply claimed that we can afford to lose a couple of million of farmers. Their main goal was not to kill, starve farmers, especially in Ukraine, but to break them. You know, the struggle was, they had to be shown who is the master. We have to, as it were, break the backbone, break the back of the farmers. And they were ready to treat them as disposable, and so on and so on. Under capitalism, the problem is not there are evil people here and there. The problem is the basic logic of the system, as it was developed by Zygmunt Bauman and many others. Some people even claim that if you look in a non-humanitarian way, just as at the pure logic of today's global capitalism, you arrive at a ratio, even some people claim, of 20 to 80%. That is to say, again, if you disregard all humanitarian problems and just look at what would have been ideal for the functioning of the system, basically the idea is that sooner or later 80% of the people are disposable, of no use. And this is maybe the concept that we should elaborate with regard to disposable life. This new form of apartheid, isn't it namely, it's no longer this clear racial distinction, but it's an invisible distinction between inside and outside. Peter Sloterdijk, who is considered a right-winger, he is, but he's intelligent. One should read him. He developed this idea that capitalism is like a gigantic sphere, global, how do you call it, cupola, covering us all. And he says the problem is that once you are inside, it appears endless. You don't even see the outside. But there is the great... So what I like about this idea is that usually we emphasize with global capitalism, oh, it's global. We, from the inside, how do we relate to this outside? Of course, we rationally know that it exists, but it's not part of our world. You know, that's my old theory, that when we hear about all human rights horrors, tortures, violence, we see it on TV screens. We know it's real, but it's not really part of our reality. From within, you think it's endless, you see it all, but no, it excludes parts of it. So that's for me the great irony. Okay, Berlin Wall fell down, but I think the paradox of global capitalism is that it's not that Berlin Wall fell down and now we live all in one big happy market universe. No, new walls are emerging. In a way, they are much more strict because you are simply not aware of the outside. If you are aware in the most disgusting humanitarian way. Even sex is becoming disposable. In what sense? Half a year ago, when I flew over Atlantic in that hemispheres, the Airline Journal of United, I read one of the most depressing texts of my life, praising sex. But you know in what way? In this utilitarian way. You know, they claimed sex is good because if you have intense sex, it helps your blood circulation. The great thing about sex is that it's useless. Sex is humanity at its purest. You take something which had a certain evolutionary function, breeding children, and you say, screw its official biological goal, we do it for our own, either pleasure or spiritual fulfillment, if it's life, whatever. But that's how civilization begins, that you do something precisely useless. When I was in Japan, they have something which I hope I remember the name correctly, shindogu. This was something more popular 20, 30 years ago, but it still goes on now. It's a very precise hobby. You have to produce an object which can really be done, not just plan it, and it functions. So it's over-utilitarian, but it should be so ridiculous that you cannot market it. You have, for example, a tube like for lipstick, but with butter. The idea is it's practical. You buy a bagel and you can just, like putting, or my favorite one. You have an inverted umbrella and collecting water here. So if you walk in the rain, you can always drink fresh water and so on. Isn't this beautiful? Because you undermine the industrial universe of utility, but from the inside, you overdo it. You don't say, no, forget about it, we need some authentic life. No, you identify with it totally so that it becomes useless. You know what is always the mistake we are making apropos disposable things? We think something can be ignored, disposable, but in a deeper structural way, economy of totality, it has a function. The crucial point for me is how something which may appear unnecessary, excessive, and so on, just for fun, can play a crucial structural role. I think the only thing that can save us is more things like shindogu, more universities where you do things which may appear useless, and so on and so on. Without this, we are caught in this logic of disposable life. We have to break out. We have to accept life in its meaninglessness, in pleasures which serve nothing, and so on and so on. Because the paradox is that if you take away from human life things which serve nothing, then the remainder, what remains, may be purely functional, but it really serves nothing and everything collapses.